things. I hope everything is working fine. Welcome to the 30th astronaut panel of ISU. Why can I say it very easily? I don't have to count because we're 30 years old. Certainly here. So every year we try to find a number of astronauts, by preference which have a link with ISU, International Space University. I will be the moderator today. My name is Walter Peters. I'm the president of ISU, but in a previous life, long time ago, I was also involved in astronaut business for many years at the European Astronaut Center. So we try to have always a nice mixture of different astronauts with different backgrounds in order to accommodate your questions. On the questions, before I forget, it is a little bit dark here. So what we suggest as a very pragmatic thing, if you have a question, can you use your telephone? And use the telephone to wave that you have a question. That's always a very pragmatic and easy way because we are blinded here and we cannot see it very easily. So let me introduce you 5 astronauts. 4 who are here and 1 who is here in spirit with us. The 4 astronauts we are very happy to have this year is, first of all, So-Yeon Yi. She is... She's a biotechnologist by training, was also at the same time the first Korean, and of course the first Korean woman who flew in space. She made 1 mission to the Mir station. Afterwards she also made an MBA. So I think she's going to change her career now very soon. What is the link of So-Yeon to ISU? It's very simple. So-Yeon is an alumnus. She was sitting where you, most of our participants, are now sitting a few years ago in 2009. She did the SSP. So that's a very obvious link. The second lady I would like to present to you is Nicole Stott. Nicole has a master's degree in engineering management. She did 2 space flights to make it relatively short. I would say 1 shorter one with a shuttle, and then a long duration space flight to the International Space Station. Nicole is also known as the artistic astronaut. Why? I think, as far as I know, you were the first astronaut who were painting in space. So she made painting in space, and in fact, she loves art so much that now, after her astronaut career, she is starting a professional artist career, which I think is very nice to see the interdisciplinarity, which we try to anyway promote in our university. What is the link with ISU? Well, the link in this case is very, very strong because she is married to Christophe, who is a member of the board of ISU and a lecturer which you will meet also tomorrow evening. Then we go to our gentleman, Dan Tani. A bit of a similar profile as Nicole, 2 space flights after obtaining engineering degrees, 1 shorter with the space shuttle and then a long-term space flight on the International Space Station. Is now also lecturing at ISU. Now, in the case of Dan, the link with ISU is a little bit indirect because his spouse is from Cork, so there is also a link indirectly. And then we have an astronaut who has done us the pleasure many times already to be in the panel. We're very grateful for that. Bob Tusk from Canada. Similar pattern. First, a shorter flight on board of the shuttle, and then a long duration flight on the International Space Station. Now, one specificity from Bob that might be interesting, I don't want to create a question here, but what might be interesting, that means that he went up in space with 2 different vehicles. one with the Russian system and one with the shuttle. So he can compare very nicely the two aspects. One point which is for you, in particular the ISU participants, and Bob knows that I'm going to say it because I say it very often, you cannot have a better example of somebody who's interdisciplinary than Bob Tursk. You have in this person, Bob Tursk, which is a fantastic lecturer. And why is he a fantastic lecturer? Because he has degrees in engineering, he's a medical doctor, and he has an MBA. So where do you find all these capacities in one person? Of course, every event, and I should not forget that, every event is only possible by people helping us, people sponsoring us. There are many. I just want to highlight two. First of all, because of the 4th of July, special day, we thank the American Embassy, who is sponsoring this event partially. And I would also like to, I don't know if our main proponent is here. I would like to thank the County Council, Mr. Ford, if he's here. Mr. Ford, thank you very much. We heard a lot about your very appreciated participation. As I already announced, there is another astronaut who is not here because due to, as you know now from the lectures, probably from Bob Tursk also, he is in what we call the prophylactorium in Russia. That means the place where you have to be a while before you go to space. So he will go soon to space. He wanted to be here. His name is Paolo Nespoli. He's an ESA astronaut from Italian origin, so an Italian nationality. He flew already 2 times, once with the shuttle, once with ISS, again, same pattern, so there is a sort of continuity in the pattern. And for many, many times, he was at the astronaut panel representing and answering questions. He really regrets that he cannot be there. However, his next flight is on the 28th of July, so that's a little bit close for astronauts to travel around in the world. So he has to be still in Star City. However, I could convince him to make a message, which we videotaped. And as I already said to Niall and my friends, and maybe also to you, Mr. Ford, I would draw your attention to the end of the video, because there is a very nice surprise for CIT and Cork in the video. Can we have the video at the moment?
Hi, I'm Paolo Nespoli, Italian astronaut of the European Space Agency, and I'm talking to you from space. Well, no, not exactly. I am in Star City, Russia, on the simulator of the Russian segment, in the final stage of preparation for the next expedition 52-53, which will take place in a couple of weeks. And so unfortunately, because of this, I'm here in quarantine in Star City, soon to go to Baikonur, and I cannot be with you tonight on this astronaut panel. In the past years, Walter Peters, ISU president, but also colleague and dear friend, invited me many times to come and talk to you and talk about space, talk about what we do in space, talk about the International Space Station and the future of space. And I always enjoyed meeting you and feeling your interest and your force and your enthusiasm, things that I really need too. But today I cannot be with you, so I'm sending you this message. The astronaut panel, they are C's very good friends too, Nicole, Dan, So Young, and who else is there? Bob Tursk on my astronaut class. Hello, I would have loved to be there with you, but I'm sure you're gonna be really funny and nice. In any case, to the 112 participants of SSP17, I really wish you a very good time, a very interesting time, and a time where you can actually look at the future. Sorry I cannot be with you, but I'm pretty sure some of you in the future will be where I am now, when I will be in a few weeks. One thing Walter Peters sent to me to bring in space is the beautiful banner and flag of the city of Cork and the Cork Institute of Technology and of course the one of ISU. These are just pieces of paper because the real flag are already stored in the vehicle, ready to go to space. I'll be back and I will get back to you. Meanwhile, enjoy and let's go in space. Ciao.
What I propose, well, I'm not proposing it because we're going to do it anyway. The way we're going to run it is as follows. I'm going to just give you the time to think about interesting questions, probably you already did, but I'm going to ask a question to all the 4 panelists, and that gives you the time to come up with, and then for the rest of the event, you will be the people who are going to put the questions, the very interesting questions. So, what I was wondering, because all 4 of them have been in space, in different vehicles, they have seen different systems, so I wondered, what do they think will be a big challenge if once humanity wants to go to Mars? What will be the big challenge for the astronauts? So-yeon, what do you think?
Whenever I got the question, would you really want to go? Answer yes. And then one day my mom literally hit me, no. So biggest challenge of mine is of course my mom. But next is, I think biggest challenge would be kind of mental readiness, because we've never done that long duration flight before, even if we're watching the movie and everything. And of course, a lot of people is ready for all long duration flight, but maybe first person would be hard time to get through all long time to get there and then touch and then coming back, because all we astronauts are a little more accustomed to have a right communication with the Earth. Whatever happens, we can have communication right away. Even if we have a delay several seconds, under this technology, we cannot even bear the 1 or 2 second delay, but to the Mars it will be longer. And whatever happens, it's harder to rescue them and then bring them back. Of course, through the brain we know, because when we watch the movie, they let us know. But once we face it, maybe we would feel totally differently. So I can think of those things first.
Nicole, is that also your perspective? Or?
Well, I think I'll follow along with that, because I remember before flying the first time, which was going to be my long duration flight. And I remember being very diligent about preparing the technical side of things that need to come in. I wanted to make sure in my notebook I had all the things for when I was going to capture the HTV, and we had all of that information, all the technical side. And I had this very vivid memory of one of our ground support team, people who, wonderful, and she reminded me, she's like, Nicole, you're going to be up there for several months. What are you thinking you'll do in your spare time? And I thought, well, there's stuff to do. I've been looking out the window, taking pictures, talking on the phone to my family, which won't necessarily be able to happen when you're traveling to Mars, at least in a timely way. And that's when this whole idea of the fact that you're living and working there. Mm-hmm. You're not just working there, you are living there. And to me, I think for that mission I did, this, ultimately I brought a paint kit and I painted, and that became something very different to me in that environment. I think those same kinds of things are going to have to be considered when we're flying, 9 months to another planet, when we're there for some extended period of time, hopefully not just touching and coming back, and then, the return trip. Because to me, as soon as that Earth goes out of view, it's going to be a very, very different experience to what we and all of human spaceflight have experienced so far. And I think we need to be very aware of ourselves and how, what we enjoy, how we'll figure out to communicate with our families, how we'll spend that free time, because there will be a lot of it, in that time to Mars.
It's correct. Correct. Dan?
Well, that's both Sion and Nicole are going down this path that I've been thinking of also But one of the things is crew mix. I've always thought that crew mix is going to be a very interesting dilemma for these long and isolated missions. And what's the number of people, what's the gender mix, what's the relationship of the people before they go? You can almost think there's no good answer there. So I would have thought several years ago that that was going to be a big challenge. But now, through the ISS experience with 6 months rotation, 6-month missions, none of that's ever been an issue. So maybe that won't be that much of an issue, even for a 3 or 4 year mission. But building on what Nicole said, assuming the vehicle is just getting to Mars and assuming the vehicle is relatively healthy, on the surface there's not much for the crew to do. And so we were actually talking about training when we were having dinner here. And one of the thoughts I had was, if you have 10 months with pretty much nothing to do, maybe what we should do is we should train the crew. That's training period. So we should not train them for what they're going to do on Mars. We should just give them all the training material or ship it up to them or beam it up to them. And that's their job. Their job for 10 months is to train to go live on Mars. And so that might be a useful work for this duration when you get there. And I just thought that might be a clever use of that time, because I think you can drive yourself crazy if you did not have useful work in that time.
It's certainly a very creative proposal. I never heard, but a very creative.
Well, I think, not to interrupt, but I think you were a proponent of that for Space Station too, for real time. And Bob and I experienced it on the station with one of the investigations that we had. There was so much that you could just learn right there with the equipment. You had the skills training already, and then you just applied it to new things. And I think that'd be awesome.
We were talking about this before, or upstairs, and right now Space Station training is 2.5 years, and I'll be honest, that whatever you learned in that first 2 years and 2 months, you're gonna pretty much forget. And then, so I believe that Space Station training should be 6 months, and then, and because we as astronauts have a good set of basic skills that we learn just by osmosis, and the particular skills we should learn on orbit. Anyway, you're right. I'm a big proponent of that.
Great. For the participants, this is not a lesson. Don't forget the core lectures. I see already.
That's not true in grad school.
I see it coming. Bob, what do you think?
Well, I think this new era of human space flight is going to be absolutely incredible. And when we go to Mars, it's going to be the story of the 21st century. It's going to be a phenomenal year when that happens. Being a medical doctor, I think about some of the medical obstacles that are out there. And there's a number of issues that we have to get more serious about, and one is ionizing radiation, like X-rays and gamma rays. X-rays, of course, are exposed to high fluxes, can damage DNA, damage the cell matrices within your body. And like when we live here on Earth, we measure radiation dosage in units called sieverts. So here on Earth, we're exposed to like 5 millisieverts per year. It's negligible just from natural sources. Where we fly, 400 kilometers up, it's higher dose, so it's about 300 millisieverts per year. The Mars mission will expose those crew members to at least 1 sievert, or 1,000 millisieverts, on a round trip, on a good trip. And if, heaven forbid, there's a major solar flare that occurs during that trip, it could be 5 sieverts. There's a 50% mortality rate if you're exposed within 1 month, if you're exposed to 5 sieverts. So we have to get really serious in the future about providing better shielding of spacecraft and habitats against ionizing radiation. Aboard the space station, the back end of the station's got a little bit more hardware there, so that's where we would go as a safe haven if there was a solar storm. But it's sort of like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It doesn't really do a whole lot of good. We have to get better about that. People are asking me, well, Bob, why don't you build a spacecraft out of lead? Well, you can't launch it. So, I mean, that would work if we could launch it. So we have to get smart about shielding, and then also maybe chemical radioprotectants as well. Like if we are exposed to radiation, is there something we can ingest or a medication that we can take that can correct the damage to our cells and to our DNA? All of us, because we've flown on the space station, have been exposed to ionizing radiation. We are at slightly higher risk of developing cataracts in our eyes, of developing genetic mutations and also certain types of cancers, thyroid cancer, it would be a good example. So again, low Earth orbit, you don't have to worry about it. The Mars mission, it'll be a serious problem.
Yeah, sure. It's a bit difficult to see here with the light in our eyes, but is there anybody who has a burning question already? I see it here, but I don't know where the microphone is.
It's okay, I can speak out.
No, that's very difficult for the people in the back to hear it.
Yep. Madam, sir, I have one question, particular in training, especially then talk about training in Mars. So my question is actually, during your long duration of astronaut training, is there any most important or remarkable training you have done? And also, especially to them, what sort of training do you think is most appropriate to be trained like in the outer space, such as Mars? Thank you.
I don't have to pick somebody as it was to you, Dan.
If I remember and understand your question correctly, in terms of when I look back at the years of training that I spent for going to the International Space Station, I think the most valuable 2 weeks I had was NASA contracted with an organization in the States called National Outdoor Leadership School, and they teach leadership through, I would call it rugged camping. So you go out and you learn how to, we hiked the canyons of the deserts of America, of the western states, and it was so interesting, and to first of all to do the hiking and to rely on each other as a team, and also they have a curriculum of leadership, and we learned about leadership skills and what it means to be a leader and all those things. That was so valuable, and still continues to be valuable in my career and my life. I carry that with me. The other training we get, which is technical training for space station, is useful, and it's good to know the voltage that comes out of the solar rays. It's good to know how the computers are networked together. But we're not primarily responsible for that when we're living on the space station. So that's part of my comment of I think that space station training just takes too long, and it's too much of the technical details. And so now I'm trying to think. There was another part of the question that you were asking me.
My second question will be, if you mentioned about spending the time, such as on Mars, can be the time for astronauts for further training. What sort of training will be appropriate for the astronaut to pick up new knowledge or learning in outer space, such as Mars, for like 10 months?
Boy, I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. Do you have any?
Well,
input?
I think when we go to Mars, at least in our initial missions, I think we're going to be operating a lot like we do right now on the space station, where you don't have the luxury of the medical doctor, the plumber, the scientist, and so each crew member has to still operate in that jack of all trades kind of way. And I think it'll be even more important when we're going to Mars, and when we don't have the opportunity to communicate with our ground teams the way we do now. When our vehicles really are designed more, I think, for autonomous operation, but when something does go wrong, it will be dependent on the crew to really be intimately involved with the troubleshooting and the repair of whatever happens. And so I think there'll be a little bit of a shift in the focus on what we train, although it might be a lot like what we already do, but we may actually use it. Right. And but I think we're going to be in that condition where we just are having to be the person that can do everything, really. And I will echo what you said, Dan. I did the NOLS training as well. And I think when we talk about going to Mars, the other kind of training that we'll need to do, you need to have an understanding not only of your crew members' strengths and weaknesses, but of your own. And when you go into an environment that's very different like that, that has its own challenges, I would also throw in the underwater missions that we do, these missions called NEMO, where we go and we live in a one module, space station sized module habitat underwater for a couple weeks at a time, where you can't just swim to the surface to escape if something's going on. That kind of environment puts you in a place where you really do have to understand yourself and how you will respond to things. And I think our training has done such a good job with where we are with Space Station right now. Bob and I flew together, and I thought one of the coolest things was when we had one of those middle of the night alarms go off, and we all float out of our crew compartment, and it was almost like magic that everybody was responding in the way we had responded on the ground to emergency training. And Bob was on the comms, and Frank was on the procedure, and we made sure everybody was where they were supposed to be. And it's really neat to see how that can work, even in an unusual environment like space.
I can tell whoever will go first, maybe he or she would have more than enough training than any other next person, because remembering my training in Russia, some of the machines not used anymore because they realized that we don't need it. But first generation of astronauts, they do all of that. And I feel so envious is until we did a rotating chair thing, and I throw up every time. But after 4 months, they realized that it doesn't help at all, so they just stopped doing. Oh my God, I did it, but why they don't do it? So maybe first Martian astronaut would have much more training than necessary, because we don't know what happens. So maybe we want to have a backup and backup and backup thing. So he or she would have a really hard time for training, I believe. Yeah.
By the way, may I also encourage the guests here, not only the participants. You feel free also to ask questions. It's not only for the participants, for all of us, and for all of you. Do I have another question? I see a lot of lights. I didn't make a good remark with the telephones, because it looks like. So I don't know where the microphone is. There are a few lights here.
We can't see anything.
Yeah, all the way back.
And at the end. So can we bring a microphone to one of the lighting people?
While we're waiting for that question too, I got to follow on with Soo-Young, because being trained for more than what you think you'll need. What I always loved was the line when we would ask the question, well, don't we need to know how to repair this, or to manipulate this valve, or whatever it was? And so, oh no, that will never break, and you'll never have to touch that.
That'll never happen.
And I don't know how many times we had to get behind a panel that you never ever were supposed to have to get behind. And when you think about not having the ground to communicate with about something like that, it'll be really interesting.
Yeah. Where's the microphone? Yeah.
Hi everyone. My name is Marcel, and I had the honor to meet Nicole and her husband Chris 10 years ago at a program called International Space School.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored to be here tonight, taking part as a participant at SSP. And I would like you to expand on the importance of STEAM education. Also, the others can join this question. Thanks.
Bob, you were silent on the previous question. You were meditating.
The question is to expand on this type of education, style of education we call STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. The foundational pillars for International Space University are something we call the 3 I's. So international, intercultural experience, and interdisciplinary. I'm a strong believer of this kind of education, because number one, it's experiential, it's hands-on, and it's bringing people from dissimilar backgrounds together to address problems. So the cutting-edge, innovative teams today are cross-disciplinary. So we all have one of these things here. It's engineers, it's sociologists that came together for this, it's mathematicians, it's artists, it's lifestyle designers that came together to design this. The greatest innovations in our nation are based on cross-disciplinary teams coming together. I could have given this task to a group of engineers, the solution would have looked quite a bit different, and I don't think quite as useful. The same thing in spaceflight as well. When we talk about going to Mars, think about the habitats. We can build a habitat based on design inputs from just architects, but if you also get in the people from a sociological perspective, get in the engineers, get in past astronauts who have already flown, get in the medical specialists as well, you come up with a better solution. So STEAM education, where you bring in the technical and the scientific folks and add them together with the artistic and humanistic and sociological folks, will always result in a better result. And ISU, International Space University, is founded on that principle. And that's why today, of the 4,000 alumni that we have of International Space University, they're out there in the world and they're making a difference.
Thank you, Bob. Where do I see the next slide coming up? I saw one here, and in the back. Leave it up to the camera people, to the microphone people.
Hello. Sorry, the question relates to, you know, for thousands of years, people looked up in space for generations through mankind, and you guys get the opportunity to go up and look down. Not too many get that opportunity. And I'm just wondering, from a personal point of view, did it have a moment when you were reflecting, looking out that window, where something in your mind, you just suddenly realized how fragile we all are? Or was there any, you know, big change in your attitudes to, you know, different things down on Earth?
Nicole, I think you already mentioned that, that it triggered something in your mind.
Yeah, I think I will not speak for the other three people or even for Paulo, who was with us earlier. But I have to believe that every single one of us has been impacted in some way by this experience. I would say positively impacted by this experience. I know that before I flew, I think I had this idea in my mind what it would look like, what it would feel like, really, to see our home planet from space. And it's just like launch. What I thought maybe it was here was like, more than I can extend my arm. And just overwhelmingly, stunningly beautiful. And that stays all the time. I think you can't look out the window and not, look at that picture right there without just seeing the beauty in it. And this glowing, colorful planet that we all share. And I think it's, ultimately, it's about, separating yourself in a way and seeing something that you think you know really well and seeing it from a whole new vantage point, a whole new perspective. And you don't even have to go to space to have that happen. There's, you can go on, venture outside of your local town and experience things differently and appreciate them, I think, in a new and different way. And for me, it really comes down to seeing Earth as this place that we all share, understanding even more that we're responsible to the planet, for its survival, which is ultimately about our mutual survival here on it. And I could talk all night about this subject, but I really believe that that's inherent to the experience. It's inherent to separating yourself from something that you think you know really well and seeing it from a new perspective.
Dan, you were working now in Japan. Is that a link with your space experience, that you also had a more global view?
Well, that's interesting. So let's see. First, to add a little bit to Nicole's comments, if anybody was at my lecture last week, the message that I tell after my experience in space is that we all have associations and loyalties in our life to our town and to our school and so we feel different citizenships. And my overwhelming sense coming back from space is that the top priority is now I'm a citizen of this planet, and it overwhelms my sense of citizenship to other associations. And I wish that many other people could share that. And just to look out the window, it's hard not to feel that. I guess it's actually building on what Bob was talking about, international and the value of intercultural. About a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, My wife and I talked about the importance of getting our children a different perspective on life. We were in a very comfortable life in America, and we both felt that it would be very valuable for us to be someplace else in the world for a while, and so we created and took an opportunity to go to Japan and live outside of Tokyo in a house 1/5 the size of our house in America, and take trains and bikes everywhere instead of driving, and it's been a great experience for us, and hopefully my children will feel not unicultural, but multicultural, and then I can only think that will help them develop that later in their lives. So we're really enjoying being in Japan and exposing our children and ourselves to another culture.
Thanks for that intercultural perspective, Soya.
Yeah, actually, I got a question when I looked down to the earth first time in my life, why I was born in that country. That was my first question. Because I grew up in South Korea, and then as a person who grew up and always lived in South Korea, I believe South Korea is not that small. But once I go up and I look down to the earth, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting until I could see the South Korean peninsula. And finally I see it, and then I grab the photo, bring it back, and then ready for camera, already passed there. So, and my Russian friends right next to you, oh, PD Soyan, and you should wait another 90 minutes to take a photo of your country. And I realized that, oh my God, such a small country I was born and grew up, but I thought like that was my whole world. And next question is, then why I was born in there? As an engineer, as a technical people, thinking about probability to be born in some place all around the earth, and then to be born in South Korea is a really, really, really low probability, even lower probability to be an astronaut among the 36,000 people, right? So, wow, why and how? And then right after that, I'm so grateful to be born in there, because what if I were born in the middle of Afghanistan? What if I were born in the middle of Africa? What if I were born in the middle of China? Or what if I were born in the middle of Kazakhstan? And then maybe my life would be totally changed. But I didn't do anything to be born in Korea. But I was born, it's not fair if there's a kids who are born in the middle of Afghanistan, how unfair it is to be born in there, because he even doesn't do anything for that. So I have a huge regret right after that. Oh my God, I've never feel grateful for that moment, even if there was the biggest game-changing thing for my life. And then after, what if I were born in that place, not in 1978, but in 1910, under the Japanese era, like my grandma? Then maybe I even cannot read and write because I'm a Korean girl who never gone to the school. And that is also not my choice, but I have a huge blessing for that. And so that was the biggest mindfulness moment of my life when I was in space. Yeah.
Very nice philosophical thought. So, where are we now? Lights everywhere.
When you were in space, was everything black, or did you see loads of junk like broken satellites and old space shuttles and stuff?
Can you tell us who you are and how old you are? That's a very interesting question. Yeah?
Oh, my name is Kaylin. I'm 10 years of age.
Aha. So, did anybody catch the question? No, not 100%.
I think I got it. So are you asking, when we looked out the window when we're in space, did everything seem black? And also, do we see any space junk or other objects in space? Is that what you were asking?
Was it like just black, or did you see loads of junk floating around in space?
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a...
Excellent question. Yeah, so when we looked out the window at the sky, of course, it was black. It was pitch black because there's no atmosphere up there. There's no diffraction of light taking place up there. So the resulting background color of the sky is black. Of course, when we look down at the planet below, it was multicolored. Before I had launched the first time, I thought that when I was going to pass over deserts, that'd be a good time to go back to work. It's not worth looking at deserts, because deserts are brown. But deserts are brown, but they're 100 shades of brown. They're 100 shades of yellow, 100 textures, 100 shades of orange, 100 shades of red. So deserts were beautiful to look at. So our beautiful planet down below is multicolored. When we're looking out the window at nighttime, that is when the sun is on the far side of the Earth and everything is black, you can start to see stars then as well. Perhaps even a little bit brighter than you'd see them on a night here in Cork. And the other thing too is that when you look at the stars from space, they don't twinkle. It's like a steady, bright beam of light. Again, because there's no atmosphere in space. So the sky is black, the Earth is beautiful, multicolored object down below that's just absolutely transfixing. And then, yes, once in a while we'd see junk floating out near the station. I'd be at the window and say, Nicole, what is that? And it'd be like a piece of foam that was going by, or a tether that was flowing by. But if you're asking about space junk, like space debris, like an old satellite, an old rocket, no, those move way too fast. They'd be past us in the blink of an eye. Those are dangerous. If they do impact the space station, they can create a big hole, which would make a bad day for us, for those of us aboard. But the mission control on the ground is tracking all of those dangerous pieces of space debris that are whizzing by, and they will call up to us every once in a while and say, tomorrow, a piece of space debris is going to pass worrisomely close to the station, and we're going to boost the station up a few kilometers so the debris will pass below you. So that happened 2 or 3 times, and the ground is helping to protect us.
Can
One-
go ahead. All right, I'll say
Okay,
it. Maybe
go
it's
ahead.
the same
Yeah,
thing.
it might be the same thing.
One thing, if you look up at the night sky and there's no clouds, sometimes you'll see what some people call shooting stars, like
Absolutely.
a micrometeorite, and that's some piece of not debris, but some piece of a rock or something that is re-entering entering the Earth's atmosphere and then is burning up and becoming bright. The cool thing from the station is that if you get to see one, it's between you and Earth, so they're below you. So the shooting stars are below you as you look down at night, and that's a cool thing to see. Is a shooting star coming under you as you look down.
And that's, to follow on that, the thing, which goes to what Bob was saying too, is that, I mean, I remember seeing that for the first time, and nobody told me that that was going to happen. So there's these things that nobody tells you is going to happen. You look out the window, you see it, it looks beautiful, you know, you float down to Bob and say, Bob, what the heck was that? Bob tells you, and then you go back and you look for more. Of course, you're probably not going to see another one right away, but you start thinking about it, and it's like, wow, that was really, really beautiful. And wow, I'm really glad that didn't hit my spaceship. If I can see it, it didn't hit my spaceship. Yeah.
Bob, you want to add something on that?
Well, speaking of things that no one told us about before first flight, my first flight was on the shuttle, and had a great first day. Went to bed that night and closed the door on my sleep station, and started to drift off to sleep. And all of a sudden I saw, poof, a flash of light in my eye, like a lightning bolt. Oh, that's odd. And then about 2 or 3 minutes later, poof, I saw another flash of light in my eye, like fireworks. And I thought, oh my God, my retina's detaching. So this kept happening every 5 minutes or so. So I went to see my commander. I said, Tom, we've got to abort the mission. My retina's detaching. We have to get to the Earth. And he said, well, what's wrong? And I said, well, I'm seeing these flashes of light in my eyes. He started to laugh. So what it is, as I mentioned earlier, we live in a radiation environment that has higher fluxes than here on Earth. It's ionizing radiation coming in, hitting a rod or a cone in the back of my retina of the eye and exciting it. So I see these flashes. So no one told me about that before my first flight, and it got me quite worried that first night. Of course, after the first night, you get used to it. You see it every night. You just ignore it, and you fall to sleep without any problem.
Okay.
The whole list of
Great
those
story.
things.
From Twitter.
Thank you. Anybody here while I'm checking some Twitter questions? Thank you very much, Remco. At the back, somebody's going to...
So a lot of innovations that we have here on Earth come from space programs, and I was wondering if there's any gadget that you guys think is really, really cool that they have aboard the ISS now that maybe wasn't there 10 years ago, or anything that you think might be coming in the next few years, or that's a problem that needs to be solved on the ISS?
Nicole, I think you're
Well,
well
Bob
placed for
has
that.
one too, but I think the one that comes to mind immediately for me is the 3D printer that's on board station. And while we haven't, printed out anything critical yet to operations there, we have a 3D printer on board. And what's interesting about it, just from having the 3D printer there, is that the technology, just like regular ink printers too, we just kind of take those for granted down here now. And it took a lot for them to get the printer that prints out our procedures and things to work in space, just the way the inks are and how it distributes it when you do the printing. And the same thing was true for the 3D printer, whether you're building it from kind of the coiled stock or powder or the sheets of material that go in. It's a very different process when it's in space, or in microgravity at least. And what they've shown, they've done this very successfully. And I remember when they did kind of a poll around the office. Well, if you were going to 3D print something in space, what would it be? And I had three things. One was a spoon, because we always eat, pretty much the only utensil we use is like a long-handled spoon. And if you lose that spoon, you're very sad, because then you don't have anything to eat your delicious food with. And the second was the belt or the buckle on the weight or on the strap that went on the bench for the exercise device, because that seemed to break a lot. And then the third was a urine funnel. And these three things were all very, there's utility and purpose to all three of these. And I'm sure in the future we'll be 3D printing a lot, more critical and important things. But those three things stood out as something that would be really good to print right now. But to me, the idea of us having a 3D printer in space, thinking about what we're going to do when we go to Mars, or sending 3D printers ahead of us to Mars to build bricks to make habitats out of, or to cover ourselves with, and to build those things that we'll need once we get there.
I heard your question, and you asked if there's any cool Earth technologies that have made their way to the space station, and 3D printing is a good example of that. But I'd like to flip your question around and give you a different answer about cool technologies from the space program that have made their way to Earth. My country, Canada, has contributed the robotics to the Space Shuttle program and also to the International Space Station. And my university, the University of Calgary, has partnered with the manufacturer of the Canadarm, the robot arm, called MD Robotics, with the Canadian Space Agency and a marketing company in a city called Winnipeg. And they've developed a neural arm, a robot arm based on the computer algorithms, based on some of the gearing mechanisms of the joints of the Canadarm, and also the vision system as well, to make a 2-meter long robot arm that does neurosurgery. And why do you want to build a robot arm to do neurosurgery? Well, a robot arm has the same dexterity as the best neurosurgeon's hand, but it's more precise and it's tremor-free as well. So using NeuroArm at our local hospital, we've done over 100 operations to date, removing tumors, brain tumors, correcting arterial venous malformations, and then removing blockages associated with hydrocephalus as well. So I think that's one of the best examples of space technology that has spun off to improve life here on Earth.
Thank you, Bob. We have a number of people looking at this, and I'm very pleased to have a question out of Saudi Arabia. That's very unusual. Maybe Dan, something, because you talked about the global, I read the question, all agencies have programs to go to Mars. Why don't they collaborate more and do one big global mission?
Well, I'm convinced that eventually we're going to get to Mars. I think that's inevitable. The path and how and who we get there is going to be messy. It's going to be very expensive, and so there's going to be financial buy-in from whatever the organization is, and whoever's a member of that organization. And so there's going to be, and it's a very long project. So there's going to be financial support and a commitment, long-time commitment for that financial support to get that going. And so I've just lost track of the question, though. What's the... Right, yeah.
Why,
All together. Why not all together?
like a more global international?
Why it has to be? Well, I think, well, I think it has to be global because I don't think any one country will be able to afford the expense or the resources to do that. And so, and I think it's appropriate that it's an international. If we're one planet traveling to another planet, I think it's absolutely appropriate that it's a fully international mission to go to another planet. And so I think it's just going to have to be that way. I don't think there's any one country that's going to have the resources to be able to commit to such a huge mission.
Absolutely, thank you. Where are we with the questions? Oops, the light go up.
Oh, look, there's a lot of them.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
I'm waving frantically over there.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they haven't gotten over that way.
Can we have the camera here? The young lady.
What's the difference between Saturn V and shuttles today?
Difference between
The difference between
Saturn V and shuttles today.
Saturn V and the shuttle?
Biggest rocket on Earth.
Is the question, what's the difference between, I heard the Saturn V and the shuttle, is that correct? Shuttles today. Well, I'll start. So the shuttle is the name of a particular rocket that was built by NASA, and the shuttle is a big airplane-looking thing. And so when we say shuttle, we talk about the space shuttle, and it's a particular rocket that both launched into space and then orbited and sometimes deployed satellites or built a space station and then came back and landed like an airplane. Saturn V was a particular rocket that was built specifically to go to the moon. It's an enormous 260-foot tall rocket, and sort of unfortunately, you can go visit some of them, real flight units, because they never flew, but it's kind of cool to walk around them because they're so huge. So now we have other rockets that we're making. There are many companies actually that are making rockets right now. A couple of them are making rockets for people with the intent of launching people into space. NASA is working on a rocket that will launch a very large rocket based on some of the space shuttle parts that will launch astronauts hopefully to an asteroid or Mars eventually, Moon further out. And so there are many rockets being made, and they all look pretty much the same, but have different particularity, different design features based on the mission that they're going to fulfill.
Can I have a microphone here in front? Because we have a young lady very interested in and I would be very interested in hearing your question of the young lady.
Is it hard to get to sleep after a really exciting day in space?
Is it hard to get to sleep?
After a really
hard day in space? Best sleep ever. Best sleep ever.
Best sleep ever.
So before my first flight, I worried whether or not I'd be able to sleep in space because I am what I call a finicky sleeper on Earth. So the only way I can fall asleep on Earth is if I'm lying on my left side with a pillow here and a pillow there. It's the only way I can fall asleep. So I was thinking, how can I do this in a weightless environment? And the first night I got to space, you heard me tell the other story, except for these flashes in my eyes, I was asleep within 10 minutes. It wasn't an issue. Because you get inside your sleeping bag and you relax, and then your arms and your legs drift up into a position like that, and your head goes over like that.
The second also?
What we need to do, though, is we need to put on eye shades because coming in through the windows every 45 minutes is sunlight. We're orbiting around the Earth every 90 minutes, so 45 minutes in sunlight, 45 minutes in darkness, 45 minutes in sunlight, and 45 minutes in darkness. So if you're sleeping out in the open, you have to put on eye shades. The other thing I did is I had to put earplugs in my ears as well, because there's life support equipment, pumps and compressors and fans that are going all the time, just to give us a living environment, air to breathe, water to drink, and that's very, very noisy. So I put earplugs in at night just to give myself some rest. But
in this position here, just floating like that, it's the most comfortable way you can sleep. Some nights, I didn't use my sleeping bag. Instead, I would just cross my legs, cross my arms, put on my eye shades, and I'd float throughout the night. And it'd be interesting to find out when I woke up in the morning where I was. Because I might be upside down, I might be in a module 2 over, and I wake up and think, where is this? So it's easy to sleep in space.
Yeah.
In the back, there is a lot of fanatic waving, so I think we better stop it and give the person a chance.
So my question is, when you came back off the spaceship, was there anything that you want to change about your life from the experience that you had when you were in space?
Ooh. Who dares that?
Well, I think, you know, it's based on some of what we all said before, too. I think this appreciation, I think it puts you in a place where when you think about what you're going to do for the rest of your life, it's always kind of there. That experience you had, what you felt about it is always there. And so hopefully that plays into everything you do from that point on, and the choices you make, and the work you're involved in, and those kinds of things. I think that's really where it was for me.
I've got a good one.
You all good?
When I came back from space and looking out the window for months and months, I came back wanting to go to these fantastic places I've seen out the window. So I have not been to the middle of Australia, but it is unbelievably beautiful, and I would love to see what it looks like from the ground. And I would love to go to the glaciers of Patagonia. There are these places that are you look at from space, and first of all, it's amazing to look down and go, there's whole societies of people there that are living there, living their lives, and yet I just get to see it as this beautiful image, right? But I did want to explore our Earth more coming back and see what it looks like here from the ground.
My case is already different because I was the first Korean astronaut. And before having flight, not many Korean people are interested in my flight or all the process. But once TV showing how I fly and how I go to the space and how I moving in a space, and all of a sudden whole Korean public are interested in me and my life and who I am. So before going to Russia, before having lunch, I'm just one of the Korean people. I'm just engineering school student. I'm just so young. But right after coming back, and everybody knows me, even if I have no idea who those people is. And when I entered to the Korean airport, opened the gate, and all the people are waving me and then screaming at me. But I thought like maybe one of the celebrities right behind me. Because it was not me, because I've never had those kind of experience before. And then hundred camera looking at me, and then even some airport security make a whole line and then make me go away. And then first my reaction, it's not me. Maybe somebody is over there. Maybe some kind of huge foster over there. But I saw my mom is almost crying right over there. Maybe me. So that of course changed my life a lot. And then, but more like changing myself, I feel like people changing before and after than me. And then there was a kind of huge changing. And then personally changing is, as I told you, I thought how grateful my life is, how grateful I was born there, how grateful I was born in this time. And then in the space station, I keep deciding, oh my God, when I go down, I should be more humble, I should be more grateful, maybe I should be more happy, kind of like that. But once getting down and then face a traffic jam, I'm starting complaining as I did before. Almost like a people who every day complaining. And then I always think, okay, I should be grateful for any situation, how bad day I have. But once some journalists make me feel so pissed and I almost say F words, and then I was not that changed. So I realized that, I'm not that kind of changed even before and after. I'm still humankind, so and that was I found.
Okay. I think we take another 2 questions and then we have to close. Oh, the panic starts.
Way over there. Way over there.
Yes,
Way
that,
over there, all the way back. Ah, yeah,
Oh,
Keith first.
What you have to study in college? What you have to study in college to be an astronaut?
I think, Nicole, you're deep to the STEM education. Yeah?
I think, first of all, you have to study something that you know you're going to enjoy. I think you really and truly have to pay attention to what you enjoy. Now, NASA or ESA or the Canadian Space Agency, the Korean Space Agency, or whatever country you're from will have some basic requirements on you. And right now, it's mostly like an engineering or a science or a medical, a technical-based degree. And then they have some criteria about how much work experience you've had, and of course medical criteria. But really and truly beyond that, it is wide open. And I love it. I didn't put it in the slides tonight with the pictures, but I have a picture of my class of astronauts. And we were selected in the year 2000, and we were the 18th group of astronauts, and there's 17 people in that picture. There's 17, so there's 3 women and 14 men in that picture. But every single person in that picture got to the seat in that picture in a very different way. Everybody enjoyed what they studied in school. Everybody loved the work they were doing after graduating from school. This idea of being an astronaut was certainly a goal for them, but I can tell you, of all of those people, if they had never been selected to be astronauts, they would be happy people today doing work that they really enjoy. And it's because they paid attention to the thing that kind of what they had their passion for, what they wanted, what they were curious about and wanted to learn more about. And that, I think, opens up so many more opportunities for you than trying to fill like the checklist and do things that other people might, or that you think other people might think you need to do to be an astronaut. And so bottom line, study what you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Very good advice. I'm going to take one last question. I hope it's one that we can.
Way over there.
Ooh la la.
Or no, okay, right here. He's right here now. Okay, sorry.
My question is, will you be ever be able to terraform Mars into a suitable living planet, or turn Mars into like a planet like Earth?
So terraformed like Earth.
That is I think that's one that you all have your opinion about. So let's go through those. What do you think? So you're a biotechnologist, so that will be close to your heart, not to your heart.
I'm not a huge fan of the terraform because I want to treat the universe and space more like top of the Everest or in the middle of the Mongolia. We want to go there to have a wonderful time and learning something, training ourselves, and I want to go back home to take a warm shower and eat my mom's food. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but I believe we can do that. And at some point we can make at least some base camp or some place to do something further and more. So I hope we will have those kind of time we can have. And also, I would love to volunteer for going there as a builder or a person who working for over there. But actually, frankly speaking, I don't know still. Yeah.
Bob?
Well, I'll be a contrarian, and I'll say that I'm an advocate for terraforming. And when I say that, I'll admit that you're asking a very astute question. It's an ethical question. Do we want to alter Mars? A lot of scientists would be upset with us for doing that because once you alter Mars, they can no longer study Mars. However, the big picture is that I don't think that humans are confined to Earth forever. I think Earth is just a cradle. And that years from now, and I'm not talking 10 years from now, I'm talking 100 or 1,000 years from now, humans are going to move out into the inner solar system, and then your great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to take a spaceship and go to another solar system. And so I think it's realistic that as our population expands, that we are going to have colonies on other planets in our solar system and in other solar systems. And the only way we can do that is through terraforming.
Nicole, is that also your opinion?
I think I'm kind of a mix
Oh.
because, sorry, because I see us as an interplanetary species as well. I see eventually we won't just be living on Earth. I think ultimately our survival depends on that as well. I don't see us ever abandoning Earth, though. I'm not a fan of this idea that we've done so much damage here and we've overpopulated so much that we have to get off and otherwise we won't survive. I see us going out into the solar system, going back to the moon and establishing settlements there, going on to Mars and doing the same thing as an extension of our life here on Earth. And hopefully as we do that, we're improving, like I believe everything we do in space is about improving life here on Earth as well. There's from sci-fi to some of our current space explorers or space developers who look at Earth as this place that we're supposed to live. We live here. We do. Our industry is off the planet somewhere, so we're not damaging it in some of the ways that we are today. And I think that same thing applies when we go on to Mars or when we go back to the moon. Is that we have to look at that place for what it offers us in its current shape. We establish our presence there, and then we learn from that and figure out how much do we need to do to this place to survive there. And I really look forward to the time when you and your children, and like Bob said, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren are where Earth is our home base, and we're looking at our solar system and beyond as a place for humanity.
Dan, last word?
I know.
Well, I've been thinking about this topic for about 5 minutes.
That's a tough question.
It is, yeah. When I think of Mars and going to Mars, I'm the nerd, so I think of the mechanics and the mission to go to Mars, and I have not spent a lot of time thinking about the philosophical, what does it look like when we can send colonies to Mars or to further, and so it's a very astute question, and I have not really thought of it. I guess I've always pictured in my mind that Earth is our home planet, and we will exist other places also, but that Earth will always be home. But I don't know. That's a good question for ethicists.
What do you think?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you get up here.
Yeah, really, what do you think? Absolutely.
All right, what do you think? Do you have a microphone?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think we won't leave. Sorry, this is not easy. But
Not too easy, is it?
Yes. I don't think we will terraform Mars because it'll seem complicated with magnetic fields and everything. I say we might stay on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years and maybe discover other planets light years away from Earth or something. And we might be able to. They might be suitable for living in a Goldilocks zone. They might be suitable. And we could,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Give him a scholarship class.
Come teach a class.
Can I, at this stage, before we do a little other chapter, I would like to ask you to give a big applause to the 4 existing. And of course also to the future astronaut. Now a little award ceremony, to say so. The Association of Space Explorers, ASE, which is grouping all the astronauts from all over the world, irrespective of their political or cultural background, they're all equal in that association. That's a fantastic association. they, over the last few years, pick out a student from the class or a participant which they think is closest to their vision. Now, this year, I will, like in a really Nobel Prize award or a very award, I will read their verdict.
Verdict.
She has shown remarkable motivation and energy in the Antarctic campaign at Concordia. Through her research, this outpost in isolation and darkness can be seen as a true analog to space, helping future spacefarers to better cope with the challenges of their journey. So may I ask Beth Haley, the winner of this year, to come to the podium, please? Congratulations.
Congratulations. Well done.
Congratulations.
Wait a second. And I promised to the Association of Space Explorers a picture with the astronauts. So if I can have the, if we can have the official photographers.
So where do you want us? Right here? Come up. Let's come up.
Up a little bit.
Yeah. Get in the middle
Maybe.
there. Yeah. Here, get in the middle.
Yeah.
It ruins the boy-girl.
In the middle, in the middle of 5 people is a bit difficult. But
Where's the camera?
Yeah. Okay.
Straight down the middle there.
okay.
Hey,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Beth. So with that, I would like to thank you all for these very interesting questions. I'm aware that there were plenty of other questions. Maybe you have a possibility afterwards, or maybe at personam if you pass by. So I would like to close formally the astronaut panel, and I would like to invite all those who want, maybe they can pass by and greet the astronauts or say a personal word. So the formal session is finished. If those who want to have a word with the astronauts can pass by here and go to the other, maybe if you stop. Thank you very much.